Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I bring a new pair of words to share their stories with each other and you. You can find our past episodes and the occasional blog post on our website at lexitecture.com. Follow along with us on Twitter and Facebook at Lexitecture, and if you really like what we do, you can support the show at patreon.com/lexitecture. Today's episode, Curfew Interrupted. Okay, before we officially get going, because we had a bit of a break for the Susie Dent guest episode, we have a new Patreon sponsor to thank. So
Yay!
An enormous heartfelt thank you to Gareth for joining up with our
Gareth.
word nerd ranks. And yeah, it's the kind of thing, it's sort of nice because I feel like most people that I've talked to of our Patreon sponsors are just like, no, just keep doing what you're doing. We do this because we like your show and we want to support it and stuff like that. And I keep sort of feeling like, oh man, we don't do enough to really like tangibly show what we're doing with their support money or what we're doing to appreciate them and all the rest of the stuff. And everyone says all the time, just no, it's cool. Just do the show. Mind your business. Go on with your life.
Yeah,
which is great. But I do want to mention that, like, for instance, when we called Susie Dent, we had to call. First of all, Susie Dent gave me her phone number, which is weird. But also,
you won't ever not get that response from me.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Good. And so we had to use Skype to call a phone, which costs money. But then I was just like, hey, no worries. We have people who help us out with stuff like that. So that, like,
yeah,
it was one of those things where it was like, yes, this is the kind of thing where these little things that you don't necessarily anticipate are where people supporting the show really helps, because then we don't have to worry about it. It's just like, sure, we can do that. It's awesome.
I kind of feel like, generally speaking, that's how support works. You know, like networks of friends or family, or a lot of the time those people are just sort of quietly there in the background and they're not demanding a great deal from you other than that you just do your thing. But occasionally there are times when you're like, I don't know how to do this thing, or I need a hand with that. And it's really lovely to feel as though there is a support network behind Lexitecture saying, it's fine, call Susie Dent, or it's exactly.
Yeah,
I very much agree.
It's very cool. So
support networks are the best.
So thank
Patreon,
you to Gareth and everyone.
Life, whatever.
Yeah, in Gareth, all manner of support.
I have been listening a lot recently to a podcast with the British comedian Richard Herring. I don't know if you know Richard Herring.
Yeah, I've brief encounters, not a real intimate knowledge of.
Oh, okay, but he has a podcast called I feel like I was talking about this with you already. He has a podcast called the Richard Herring Leicester Theatre Square podcast.
Oh yeah, it's some really
and so he has this thing this running joke where he talks about, and the cool guys call it Rehelistapa. And Rehelistapa is wonderful, but what he does, he has supporters, and his supporters have bought a badge. That's like the sort of first tier level of support, if you buy a badge to support the podcast. But he calls them badgers.
Oh, nice.
And I absolutely love that. So you can become a badger and support the podcast. I feel like our wonderful, wonderful Patreon supporters, each and every one of whom I just imagine surrounded by beautiful books and gorgeous, slightly dusty bookshelves all the time. I feel like they need a name.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So I don't have any like words of wisdom and great ideas for that at the moment. Maybe wonderful support community Patreon people, maybe they will come up with something themselves.
Yeah.
But I'm going to think about that because I absolutely love the badgers.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I also had someone get in touch. We had someone get in touch over Twitter to say that they officially would really enjoy a T-shirt that said, "I decided to be fascinated with this."
Oh, how much?
Which is probably my favorite thing that has been uttered on this show, which which says a lot that it wasn't uttered by one of us, but it it was pretty great.
That's like there's us and there's Susie Dent.
Yeah, no, there's no
like
shame in that.
If anyone was gonna say something T-shirtable, it was going to be her before it was going to be us.
Yeah. So anyway, that
For sure.
I'm still pondering the idea of a T-shirt because that would
I
be quite
decided
cool.
to be fascinated by it. So great.
Yes. All right.
Oh, I have to also do. I have to do a little quiet shout out.
Okay.
Quiet shout, as if I am possibly capable of such a thing. To Chris. Chris is a friend of mine. We were at university together many moons ago, and he posted on Facebook a few weeks ago to say, "Podcast people, I'm totally addicted to podcasts right now. I'm running out of things to listen to. Any recommendations?" And I remembered him saying way back when Lexitecture first started, "Oh, cool, I'm definitely going to check this out." So I said to him, "Well, Lexitecture, obviously, ha ha ha," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then suggested a couple of other things. And it appeared that the "I'm definitely going to check that out" was put on the list of "I'm definitely going to check that out" things. You know,
Right,
we
yeah.
all have one of those.
Of course.
And that was the reminder that he needed to actually check us out. And he's just sent me a message to say how much he's enjoying it and that he has a favourite new podcast. So, yay!
Very
I love it when
nice.
people like what we do.
Awesome.
But also, it made me think about my own, I really must listen to that, I really must watch that list,
Right.
and get on with some things that I've been kind of not putting off, but just not quite getting to for a long time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, those
wonderful,
lists are-
Chris. It's so great that you're liking what we're doing, and it's just generally wonderful when anybody likes what we do.
Yeah. Hooray for Chris.
Hooray! Okay,
Awesome.
words.
Words. Go Amy.
Oh, okay, right. Me. Now, I believe that I have been annoyingly kicked out of my OED access. Not like forever, just because
Just read it. This logged out for
put
time.
these windows up and it's
Right.
locked me out.
Should I go first for now while you get everything recovered?
It'll only take me a minute, I think.
Oh, perfect.
Maybe like an Amy minute. Oh God, I have two of the same things going on.
Right.
Do you also have because I know you hate Apple, but as an Apple person these days, I don't have to remember passwords anymore. Apple remembers them for me.
Right.
And to start with, I thought this was far too sinister and I didn't like it and I wouldn't let them do it. And then I got lazy and was like, yeah, remember my stuff for me. But what that means is that it's occasionally very, very convenient and then also occasionally very annoying.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember any of my passwords anymore. I haven't had to remember one for ages. So when the system fails, I'm totally boned, basically.
Yeah, that's I'm like that, but with LastPass, which is another like a third party
Okay, cool.
app thing, which actually generates your passwords for you. So it's really good because I don't even have
Yeah.
Not only do I not remember them, I don't even know what they are.
Yeah.
Because they just do
Apple does
strings
the
of
same
letters
thing.
and numbers and special characters, and I just say how many of which ones I want and go, and then it just generates a password and saves it for me, and then I file it away.
Okay.
Well, I don't file it away. It files it away. I don't know. Yeah. Like you say, if anything went horribly wrong, I would be not in a good spot.
It's a bit like I don't know. I occasionally wonder about things like this, and I'm sure other people do too. I like to tell myself that because it feels less weird. But like, what if I died? Right? There
Yeah.
are several people in my life who are only in my life electronically. Like you're pretty much one of those people. You know, we have
Yeah.
each other's phone number, I suppose, but we are generally, you know, obviously you're in one continent and I'm in the other,
Yeah.
so we do what we can and we stay in touch and we do this stuff, which is brilliant. But like, if I was to die, you would have no idea until somebody let you know.
Yeah.
And
I would just think
like,
you were being a dick about it and not
Yeah,
answering your
probably.
messages.
you'd be like, Christ, there's flaky and there's flaky women. Get on with things.
Come on.
But and then also like there are some people who like are not friends of my husband. Like not that like he hates them and wishes them ill, but just like you'd be okay because
Sweet.
Ross knows you enough to know that, you know, this is a big part of what we do and why we're friends and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm pretty sure that in the aftermath of the terribleness of me being dead, Ross would think eventually, oh crap, I'd better let Ryan know.
Right.
But there are some people out there, interweb-wise, who would just be like, remember that girl? She's a dick. I can't believe she just ghosted me.
Jeez.
Yeah. Very strange. Okay, so the word I want to talk about today is interrupt.
Oh, nice.
interrupt. And the OED, when you have a wee look for interrupt, gives you 3 results. It gives you the noun, the adjective, and the verb. Now, of course, I am a world-class interrupter. The reason that I am talking about this word today is because we got to the end of recording with Susie Dent. Remember that time we recorded with Susie Dent?
That was awesome.
And basically, as soon as we stopped talking to her, my first thought was, oh, I interrupted her so many times. Oh my God. I'm so rude. Like, this is awkward. And then I thought about how I also interrupted Mignon, and I also interrupted Mark and Kevin, and I interrupt you all the time. And the Talk guys, I interrupted everybody so many times that I thought, well, you know, this is kind of who I am as a human being. So I'm just going to have to go with that and maybe look at the word a little bit more.
Yeah, that's good.
So
I like this.
I had a wee look on Etim Online, because it's always a great place to start when you want to know about a word.
Absolutely.
Here is what Etim Online has to say. Interrupt, verb, dating from circa 1400, to interfere with a legal right, from Latin interruptus, past participle of interrumpere, to break apart, break off, or break through, from inter, meaning between, and in this case, rumpere, to break, as in rupture or corrupt. The meaning to break into, break in upon, or disturb the action of, especially of speech, is from the early 15th century in English. So I have precedent.
You
is
do,
what I'm saying
absolutely.
here. I have a long line of interrupting people. So much so that as far back as the early 15th century, this word was required.
Absolutely.
So lots of interesting parts there. The first of which not only forms interrupt, it also forms interesting. The prefix inter. And I wanted to have a little look at that. So we have, it's a word-forming element. I love this. Etim Online says, a word-forming element used freely in English, which made me think, are there some that you're not allowed to use?
Yeah, some
Like,
are
they
used
expensive?
trepidatiously.
So we get, it's generally translated as meaning Latin inter, among, between, betwixt, a word that's not used often
love
enough,
betwixt.
or in the middle of. So, being in the middle of something is key to the sense of interruption, as in the middle of a sentence, the middle of a word, the middle of an idea, a thought, whatever it is. But I also quite like the fact that the second part literally means to break. So it means breaking something in the middle of it. And I kind of felt as though that was maybe a little bit unfair. Because an interruption doesn't always break what's going on. Sometimes it does.
Right.
Sometimes, for example, I'm very good if I'm interrupted in the middle of anything, I often forget what the first thing was and have to be reminded to go back to it.
Right, yeah.
But so in that sense, I feel like, it's a break, but it's not necessarily always a break. We also have, I love it when you set up tabs and then you press links and completely interfere with your own system.
Interrupting it, if you will.
Interrupting it, if you will. Oh, your dad jokes galore.
Right.
So we had inter, this in the middle of, but also, kind of breaking apart, getting in the way of.
Right,
kind of meaning. And we also had that rumpere part, which gives us words like rupture and corrupt. So
I have
corrupt.
to ask, just to do my own interruption.
Yeah, sure. Please do.
Just because I'm only 10. Does that have any connection with the word rump?
Not as far as I was aware. I also wondered about rumpere, particularly in the sense of like breaking wind, because break is used in that case.
Yeah.
And rumpere or trumpery, if you will.
Or just your rump having a break in the, that whole thing. That's
yeah,
where,
I hadn't think about that.
Again, because I'm only 11 years old, then that's why that happened.
Of course, that's why we're friends.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, that's quite all right. So this was interesting. I liked this. Corrupt from the early 14th century. And we have, it says, probably an intensive prefix of com, a simulated form of com,
right,
as in with, plus rumpere, to break. From a nasalized form of pi, runp, R-U-N-P, to break. Source also of Sanskrit rupya, which means to suffer from a stomach ache.
Huh.
How
That's-
wonderful.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I mean, Rum Parade didn't get that sense in terms of interrupt, but corrupt, we have this sense of these other kind of feathering out meanings. I always get so excited when there are Sanskrit words that come from Pi roots that also have English cognates, because to me, Sanskrit is geographically far off, but it's also, from what little I know of Sanskrit through yoga, it's a tremendously difficult language to translate.
Right.
It's very, very rare that you can take a Sanskrit word and substitute one English word and say that's what it means.
Right. Yeah.
Very rare indeed. So the example that I usually give of that is the word namaste, which is generally used at the end of a yoga class. And the best translation that's given of namaste is usually translated as the light in me sees, salutes, and honours the light in you.
Oh, okay.
So the sacred parts of me, if you will,
Yeah.
honour and recognise and connect to the sacred parts in you, which is rather beautiful. So when I hear, oh yeah, here's a little piece of an English word that comes from a Pi root. Oh, and we also have the Sanskrit thing going on. It blows my mind every single time.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So while we were breaking, whether it was breaking a character as in corrupt or breaking a sentence as an interrupt, the Sanskrit speaking folks, they were having stomach aches.
Good old Sanskrit.
I liked this quite a lot. We also get the sense from rupture, which is definitely that sense of something being broken.
Right, yeah.
Originally a medical word, again from Etom Online, ruptura, the breaking of an arm or a leg. And coming from that same RUNP Pi root that gives us corrupt and interrupt. So when we get to the OED, because we always do, because it's amazing, have you checked out the historical?
I haven't. I forgot all about
yet?
that somehow. I got to do that.
Yeah, it's really good. It's great. Let's not go down that particular rabbit hole because I still haven't eaten anything today and I might collapse.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel a little bit like Alice at the precipice of the White Rabbit's hole at that particular point.
Yeah.
Can one be at the precipice of a hole? I feel like I've said something quite rude without meaning to. Anyway.
Something hilarious in there, but I don't know what it is.
So we get very, very, very similar sort of houses, the participial. Oh, do you say participle or participle?
Participle.
Okay. I was always taught participle by my wonderful, wonderful Latin teacher, Mrs. Maureen Strachan, who is one of the reasons why I became a teacher ever, and also a key, crucial part of the reason that I love etymology.
Nice.
And she taught us about participles in Latin, and my mother, who likes things to be correct, always insisted that the word was pronounced participle.
Participle.
Yeah. And it is rather, other than in the Latin classroom, it's the sort of word that you only ever see written down. And
yeah.
I also saw a tweet this week that said there should be a hotline that you can call.
Yes.
Before you use a word in real life that you've only ever seen written down. And the somewhere in the tweet was the phrase, where they could say, "Oh, sweetie," and explain it to you.
Yeah, it's perfect. I love
Hit
that.
her toe. That was one that I couldn't. I'd only ever seen in a book.
Right.
And I remember reading a poem aloud to my mum, and she found it very hilarious that I used the word quay, and she said it's key. And I said, it says quay here.
Yeah, it sure does.
Which, yeah, pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah.
So, we have in the OED, am I interrupting myself? Have I just meta-interrupted? God knows.
I think there's some multi-layered interruption going on. It's pretty perfect.
So, the definition is given as to break in upon an action, a process, or a condition, especially speech or discourse, to break the continuity of something in time, to break off or to hinder the countenance or course of something, or to cause to cease or stop, usually temporarily. And the 1420, or there or thereabouts, citation that we'll have in the OED says, "For as mock as it not to me sit, your tale for to interrupt or break." And I quite love the sense that the first time that we have this word written down, it was about someone telling a story and someone else getting in the way. Because I kind of feel like that might be our podcast.
It's our whole
And then,
model.
yeah, so later on we have, around about 1529, we have another, who made you so bold to interrupt my tale? So again, this sense of, I'm talking, I'm telling a story, I'm saying something important. Shut the hell up.
Yeah.
We also get to break the continuity of something in space or order. So to, as a beam interrupted from its continuity unto the sun is immediately deprived of light. So in other words, this sort of natural order of things that should be going on, but for some reason have stopped.
Right.
And then the second sense, the one that we know and love, to break in upon a person while doing something, especially speaking.
Right.
What I really loved in the Etymon line was the sense that the earliest meaning of the word was to interfere with a legal right.
Yeah. It's so specific.
So not just to stop a thing happening, but to take say the right to free speech. There's a good one, and saying, I will not let you say that thing. Thus, I am interrupting you because your right to speak has been broken off.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked that one. I thought that was quite interesting. And then we also get the action of interrupting from 1956, which is originally in computing in reference to programs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so a program interrupt has a slightly different but
Oh, right. Yeah,
also
okay.
incredibly similar affair going on.
Yeah.
Now, I have a tab here, and I don't know why it's here. And I feel like it was an important note at one point. Oh, I see it there. Okay. I have it now.
This is
So meticulous.
this is the most Amy word that we've ever done.
Yeah. For interrupt, just right, Amy.
Perfect.
So I didn't find, the way Etymon Line often very, very helpfully has entries for the pirates that
Yes.
provide the words that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case with either inter or for rupt. We got a little bit of rupt via corrupt and rupture, but I was curious about inter. So I did a little bit of digging, and I discovered that the Proto-European root here seems to be star, as is usually given for pirates, hen, Hen, and
Okay.
we get some really, really interesting divergences from there. So we have henter, adverb meaning between, and we get this comes into Albanian as enter, pretty similar to what we then have in English. Celtic, enter. Germanic, under, conflated here with the root NDER or NDHER. And in Indo-Iranian, hantar. Italic gets enter. There is some absolutely spine-tinglingly wonderful script in this entry for Oscan and Umbrian.
Ooh.
And it is from italic enter that I found myself kind of getting interested and getting excited about. So the sense that things have to happen in the middle, the sense that, if you will, things don't always go to plan, not only is it old, it's also incredibly widespread. We have it in so many, probably all, Proto-Indo-European derived languages. So what this is all about, really, the conclusion that I've come to is that I am a serial interrupter, but I'm not alone. I'm in good company. I feel like something that's been happening for such a long time in so many languages and in so many cultures is probably pretty fundamental to the act of being a human being who speaks and has, dare I say it, I must be on the double entendre pills this week. I was about to say, and has intercourse with another. I mean, of course, in the fa sense. So interruptions, I kind of want to apologise, but I refuse to.
Yeah.
And this brings me then to the last thing that I want to say about interruptions, which is perhaps I have to clarify this, okay? I have to clarify that the worst interruption of all time and the best interruption of all time, certainly in modern popular culture terms, they were both carried out by the same person, the one and only Kanye West.
Right.
And I don't actually believe that Kanye West is a real person. Have we talked about this before?
I don't know. It sounds vaguely familiar, but maybe we talked about it.
I'm pretty sure that Kanye West is a social experiment.
That seems fair.
Yeah, I just can't wrap my head around the fact that he is an ordinary dude who gets up in the morning and, you know, goes for a dump and has a shower and gets bored and has to cut his nails and really believes the things that he believes and says the things that he says. It doesn't compute for me. It's really, really hard for me to take that in. So I've gone the path of least resistance to just say, I'm pretty sure he's made up.
Yeah.
And
instead of just constantly asking, can you believe it?
Oh, Ryan. New high / new low.
Right. Speaking of highs and lows. Okay, sorry, go on.
No, that's okay. So the very, very famous and almost universally condemned as being, you know, having the right to free speech that will not be interrupted by, you know, taking away that legal right. It does mean that sometimes people say things that are, well, you know, Kanye had every right to say what he said. And
sure,
probably he was right in what he was saying. You know, there were many, many people who agreed with him.
Yeah. But
the way in which he did it was pretty horrendous. I'm, of course, talking about the VMA situation where Taylor Swift was awarded Best Album. And
when
Kanye
she was like
West,
12.
Yeah, approximately. Kanye West ran on stage and said, yeah, very good. Yeah, except Beyonce should have won, by the way. So as far as interruptions go, that one was pretty public. And, you know, I like to think that, generally speaking, when I interrupt a person, it's usually because I've gotten too excited to hang on to the thing that I want to say because I might forget it.
Yeah.
Rather than to directly contradict and be rude to that person, I hope.
Right.
If it's ever the latter, please call me out on that because that's not okay.
Right.
But also, the Hurricane Katrina telethon Mike Myers Kanye West interruption might be the best thing I've ever seen on video in my whole life. George Bush hates black people.
Yeah.
So, interrupt. I'm going to leave it there.
That's fantastic. It's also the source of my favorite knock-knock joke ever.
Okay.
Just knock-knock.
Am I going to regret this?
Yeah, knock-knock.
I've already interrupted you twice. Who's there?
Interrupting cow.
Interrupting
Moo.
cow. I love that joke.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
I love that joke, but I always get performance anxiety and I'm unable to interrupt without first making a bizarre noise. I'll go like, moo, and then it's ruined. You would think that as a champion interrupter, I would be okay with that, but no, it comes naturally. I can't control it.
That's what it is. It's like knowing jokes and someone being like, tell me a joke, and then you don't know any jokes at all.
None. Yeah.
Or songs or whatever, what the case may be.
Basically, I find any time I use the words, for example, my mind is immediately wiped clean.
Just voids of all information.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Awesome. So my word this time is curfew.
Curfew. Interesting.
Our curfew being this is one of those interesting words. Being a sort of white upper middle class, straight, white, everyone listens to me no matter how dumb my ideas are, dude.
Yeah, you're basically the worst.
I'm just a walking first world problems list. My first association with curfew is when your parents tell you you have to be back by a certain time, right? When you're a kid, when you're a teenager, it's like, okay, your curfew is whatever, you have to be back in the house by this one. But of course, there's the other sort of more sinister, no offense to left-handed people out there, curfew in less liberated and less fortunate circumstances where it's like basically an order of martial law, right? Civilians can't be out of your house, otherwise we will do terrible things to you.
Yeah, sure.
Curfew. But either way, dictionary.com starts with an order establishing a specific time in the evening after which certain regulations apply. So that would be either everyone's got to be inside or it's got a separate...
It's a very polite definition, isn't it?
It is,
Very
yeah.
measured and calm.
Yeah. So it's, which I guess dictionaries, that's kind of their jam. So that's good. It's got a separate one for regulation requiring a person to be home at a certain prescribed time as imposed by a
Okay.
parent on a child. And then curfew is like referring to the time or the time period when curfew is in effect. And then 5 and 6 are a signal, usually made with a bell, announcing the start of the time of restrictions under a curfew. So you could call
Oh,
the klaxon that says curfew is starting, you could also call that a curfew. Although I haven't actually
okay.
heard that used very often. But it's because my parents didn't have a big alarm or bell to ring when I was supposed to be home.
Oh,
Uh,
I kind of want parents with bells and gongs
Absolutely. Everyone's got their
and
own
sirens and
sort of tone
klaxons.
for the bell.
It's like a little bit like ringtones, like you know the way when ringtones were first sort of new and didn't just have to ring, and
Yeah.
people would have tremendously embarrassing ringtones,
Yes.
often unintentionally. But I feel like that would be a pretty effective way to get your kids home by a certain time.
Yeah.
Like you'll be home by 7:30 because if you're not at 7:30, the recording of you singing along to Gangnam Style when you were 8 will be broadcast through the neighborhood.
Oh, it's like I respect your decision to not have children, but man, you are robbing future generations of incredibly luxurious torment, and I'm really sad about
Well,
that.
I don't know that that's necessarily a good reason to like. I'd be amazing at being really horrible to a child. Let's make one. I'm not really down with that.
Procreation based entirely on future spite. Excellent. Okay, so, right, curfew. So the this is kind of interesting. So it comes from French. So it's an Anglo-French compound word that's been around since the early 14th century. So pretty old. And it meant originally an evening signal or the ringing of the bells at a fixed hour.
Okay.
And where it comes from, the compound are the French words for cover and fire. So the modern French would
Oh.
be couvre-feu, which
Okay.
makes it clear, like it's pretty obvious the connection between that and where it would have morphed into English curfew. But it's because at that time when all the bells were ringing, that was the signal to everyone in the village, town, city, whatever, that all their fires had to go out.
Okay.
They had to
Cool.
cover all the fires. And whether that was for, like, it's unclear whether that was primarily for defensive reasons, like the blackout in London during the Blitz,
Yeah, that's just what I was thinking about. Put
or
that
if
light
it
out.
was a public safety thing where it was just like everyone knows the fires have to be well and truly extinguished because fire was like the thing that killed everyone back in
Yeah,
the day
fair
and
enough.
murdered all the towns. And so it was important to have a unified approach to putting out your fires afterwards, after you're done with them. So I don't know which one of those it was, but that was the idea. And I kind of like that idea as a curfew is like having such a concrete, fire's got to go out. And of course, once the fire is out, what else are you going to do?
That's it.
You're going to go to
Yeah, there's
bed,
not much else
and this
going on.
what's going to happen. There were a couple interesting offshoots from this, and I spent most of the time here on Edam Online. I dove into the OED a little bit, but Edam Online had some very cool paths to follow. It breaks the early French word down into its components, but instead of having so it's got couvre, the French word for cover, and then it links to cover, the English word, which makes sense. But then it had the bit after after feu, after the French word for fire, it had a link to the word focus. And I went, huh? And so I clicked on that, obviously, and it brought me to focus. And focus has been used in the more like the standard sense, like a point of convergence since like the 1640s. It was in optics around the same time as like the focal point of a lens. But it comes from a Latin word spelled exactly the same way of unknown origin before this. And the Latin
Ooh,
word
favorite
focus,
phrase ever.
yeah, the Latin word focus meant hearth or fireplace, and figuratively home or family.
Awesome.
And in post-classical Latin, it was broadened to just be fire. So the fire was literally the focus.
The focal point. Yeah.
And because things converge on the home at the hearth where you do your cooking and your socializing. So that was very interesting. So that's why...
That's super cool.
That's where the f bit... So there's some French etymology for you because that comes from... It's fire because it came from focus in Latin.
Nice.
Which is where we get focus, which has nothing to do with fire in English, which is interesting. The cover bit... I expected that to just be like, okay, fine, there it is. But I clicked on it anyway because I'm like that. And it has some interesting layers. So you remember how when we did the word no, it was really interesting because it was surprising like how many unnecessary layers of emphasis there was sort of built up in
Yeah, yeah, sure.
the sort of etymology kind of like archaeology thing where you keep going down layers and layers and layers, and it's just like, what is all this stuff on top of this? You don't need any of this extra crap. It already means no. Um, Cover was a little bit like that. So you trace its family tree, and you get couvrir in Old French, meaning to cover, conceal, or protect. Before that, you get to Latin coperire, from the Latin cooperire, so it's Coperire, and then the other one is with a double O, as in cooperate or whatever, meaning to cover over, overwhelm, or bury. That always that idea of like, you're totally, and it's again that emphasis, right? And so, I was thinking of another word that I did just recently, and I cannot remember what the word was, but it was one of these ones that you don't think has a prefix, but does.
Yeah,
so
like empty.
Yeah. So the cooperire part, the co bit at the beginning is again from that intent, the prefix com, as in, or cooperate, or certain to co, but with or together, right?
Yeah, sure.
But it was also earlier used as an intensifier. I'm gonna have to look up what word that was that I was thinking about, because it's one that we did relatively recently, and I just cannot remember what it was.
Is it the equivalent of your open tab that you do not know why it's open?
This is definitely it, and so I don't actually remember.
I deliberately put this here. Why did I do that thing?
Yeah, that's right. Why did I do that? But anyway, yeah. So the co-op is the intensifier, with operire meaning to close or to cover. So now we've gotten rid of...
To completely, absolutely close or cover.
Yeah. So we've gotten rid of the intensifier, only to find that we are still left with essentially just the same thing as we had before, because it still just means cover, which was weird. And then so I looked into the operire part, the cover part. It comes from a pi compound with op at the beginning of it. So op in the pi sense was a prefix, and the op meant over.
Okay.
And the second bit meant to cover. So it's like
more covering.
Even in the pi origins, there was one syllable and meant cover. And then Latin took it, and then Pi took it. The Proto-Indo-European speakers took it and added another layer of covering over, to which the Latin added another intensifying prefix on it to still mean cover. So like, I just thought it was really interesting, this vision of it just being, the word itself has been covered over and over and over and over and over again.
Over and over
to
and
try
over
to
and
intensify
over.
its meaning over the centuries and millennia.
But then, as you mentioned, if the thing that you're covering is a fire, particularly if that fire is the focus of your home, if it's inside your house, you want to make sure it's covered pretty well thoroughly.
That's true, yeah. That's true.
This is not a could be bad thing. This is a everyone could die and all your stuff would be gone.
Yeah. I just kept picturing, like, at the end of the old Scooby-Doo episodes where they, I would have got away with too if it wasn't for your meddling kids, and they always pull the mask off the ghost or the monster or whatever else, and it's Old Man Withers from the Haunted Amusement Park.
There would have been 18 masks.
Yeah, I just kept picturing that. And it was like, it's the ghost, and then they pull off the mask, and it's the ghost underneath. And then take like 3 or 4 more tries to get to Old Man Withers. And they'd be like, why did you put so many masks on? One would have sufficed. It was fine. You fooled everyone else except for us, stoners.
I would have gotten away with it if it hadn't been for you pesky etymologists.
Or if I had just put on my 8th mask would have been the one that they stopped at and be like, oh, I guess this is the real guy. Anyway, so that's cover. It's weird. So, that's sort of Curfew in a nutshell. There was one other interesting note. The OED had a note that talked about a really long-standing belief, and this might serve as one of these. This is one of those questions that I have. It's like, is this close to the first and longest-standing sort of urban legend? These things that everyone just sort of takes. Everyone knows this, but it's not actually true. A long-standing belief that the original curfew was implemented by William the Conqueror as a tool of political repression. So he's the guy that invented the use of the curfew to sort of silence opposition and keep people under control.
Mm-hmm.
And this says that this has been a belief, according to the OED, since the 1500s, but, quote, rests on no early historical evidence, end quote, in that delightful way that the OED, like what I picture, like just a staunch, and apologies because this is one of these stereotypes, but is always British in my brain, speaking with the Queen's English, of course, just in a very dry, deadpan way, absolutely slamming the door on something. I think you'll find that rests on no early historical evidence.
And it's like that very sort of anodyne, calm, measured definition from dictionary.com. It's essentially saying it's an urban legend, which is exactly what you did. Although urban legend sounds an awful lot more interesting and cool and than saying it's been believed since the 1500s, but there is no fact. There's no historical reason that we should believe this.
Yeah,
that's pretty much the kernel of all urban legends, isn't it? There's no evidence, but we love these stories, so we'll keep them going.
We'll go with them. Yeah. So that's
Cool.
curfew. Cover up the fire.
Awesome. Curfew is one of these words that, again, back to that sense of reading a word and never seeing it. I was aware of it in print for a lot longer than I was aware of anyone actually using the word.
Oh, okay.
And I'm pretty sure that the first few times I encountered it in text, I had no idea, couldn't figure out from context what the word was about at all. It was kind of one of these slightly mysterious words. I obviously wasn't bothered enough to go and look it up.
Right.
I suppose in those days that would have meant actually finding a dictionary,
Yeah.
like a muggle. But the first time I sort of first time I became aware of what the meaning was, it was kind of a, right, kind of affair. The other thing that it made me think about, the whole, cover the fire, it's the end of the day, is the practice that they used in like monasteries and places like that of the canonical hours. So I looked this up while you were talking because I don't know enough about monk life. I didn't choose the monk life.
That monk life.
Didn't know enough about it to sort of give you any great historical basis for fact. But there are services still within certain sections of Christian churches that are named after these bells. And basically, if you lived in a monastery, let's hope you didn't like sleeping too much, because the day was split up by bells. And the first of these was matins during the night at about 2 a.m.
Yep.
And so you heard that bell, you got up and you prayed. Then at 5 a.m, when Lauds was chiming, you got up again, or you left whatever you were doing since 2 a.m, and then you did some more praying. And then we have prime, terce, sext, and none, as in, 1, 2, and 6th and 9th, referring to the hours of the days. So 6 a.m, 9 a.m, 12, noon, and 3 p.m. Then vespers. And vespers is generally, they talk about at the lighting of the lamps. So whatever time you had to do that was when vespers happened.
Right, okay.
And then finally Compline, which was about 7 p.m. So some of the, I certainly remember when I was an organist in the Episcopal Church, they would have services called Compline, which were, sort of evening services, and they would have matins. Thankfully not at 2 a.m.
Yeah, no kidding.
But it's quite wonderful to think about a time when time was given to you by someone else. I mean,
yeah,
time is always given to us by someone else, but we all have access to it.
Yes, yeah.
It's rather lovely to, particularly as someone for whom time often runs away with me, and I find myself going, "It's what? How have so many hours passed?" kind of thing. I would have been caught out by curfew a lot, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also,
definitely.
Whoever wants to put a fire out, fires are awesome.
They are awesome.
I'm so excited about Focus because, as far as I'm concerned, if there is a fire burning where I am, that's the thing I'm going to be looking at and giving my attention to.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's it for another episode of Lexitecture. To get in touch with us about something you heard this episode, you can email us at words@lexitecture.com. You can also follow along and talk to us at Lexitecture on Facebook and Twitter, and at Lexitecture Podcast on Instagram. For back episodes and the occasional blog post, visit us at lexitecture.com. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.